Are you ready to recover from your Somatic OCD Heart Attack Edition? Get your pen and paper, get ready, listen to me. I'm going to tell you what you need to do to get better from this thing. Okay, disclaimer, this is not a substitute for psychotherapy or mental health treatment. If you want to be treated by a mental health practitioner, reach out to a licensed one in your state. I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. Okay, here we go. So basic education about OCD first is there's two parts of your brain. One is the prefrontal cortex, the other is the amygdala. This is your logical, rational, reasonable part of your brain, right? This is the troublemaker. This is the little goblin. Really, it's trying to protect you, but, we have an anxiety disorder. We have OCD, right? So that thing is the thing that's like, the world is scary. Everything is scary. And this thing is like, seriously? Like, okay, like, what do I have to do to like stop being scared? I don't like this. Like, I need to figure it out. And then like the amygdala is like, what? You don't know either? Oh my gosh. And then they're just fighting and like, whatever, right? So every time we are entertaining this amygdala, the little song and dance it does when we're 10 out of 10 scared, right? The amygdala is like, oh my gosh, this must mean something. I knew it. I was right. I was right to protect you with that signal. And I'm going to keep protecting you because that's my job. We need to teach that amygdala. This is, we're going to walk the walk, right? First, we're going to train the prefrontal cortex. Like, dude, this is what's rational. And then the prefrontal cortex is going to help our amygdala, right? Again, that's not easy because that means we're going to have to ride our trigger, right? Without having to do any compulsions or without doing compulsions or safety behaviors, right? That is what's actually going to show the amygdala, like, oh, I guess it's fine. We can't just tell the amygdala. But first we can get this prefrontal cortex ready, like ready to go, ready for the fight, right? So this is one thing that I want you to note. You can't control your thoughts. You also can't control your triggers, right? You can move through your trigger differently. We can over time like retrain that amygdala, but you can't control if you get an anxiety trigger or an OCD trigger. You don't know, like you can't control when you're going to have an OCD episode, right? You can't prevent them. But in time, you can teach your brain like kind of like I call it like a software update, right? So that it can so that when it sounds the false alarm, it can learn like, oh, like I don't think I need to do this because like I did and like they didn't even care. So like I guess it's nothing. I'll try again later just to be sure. It needs to be trained. It needs to be shown, right? So what I'm about to do with you, I'm going to break down the fear, okay? I need to kind of guess. So I've worked with this plenty enough to be able to guess like what that fear might look like. And then I'm going to write out a rational, reasonable, like very gray area because we're getting out of our black and white thinking with our OCD, right? I'm going to think of a rational, reasonable, clear response for you to zoom out because you know what happens when we have OCD, right? We zoom into a very, very specific fear, right? We take a little bit of something, a very tiny possibility, and we blow it up and make it seem like it's happening, right? But we actually have very little evidence. If you kind of look at like, with OCD, it's always big, humongous claim, tiny evidence. When else does that work in life, right? So that's why we gotta, what I call it, take it to court. We're gonna tear this thing apart. We're gonna be like, dude, this isn't adding up, right? So this is how I've broken down the fear. So again, I have to kind of assume, I have to kind of do what I would assume the average fear is, right? So I'm breaking down the fear. I'm afraid that my fast beating heart could indicate that I am about to or am presently experiencing a heart attack, about to have a heart attack, right? If I were to suddenly have a heart attack, that would be terrible. There's it black and white, right? I'm afraid I could never recover, that it will be painful and I will possibly die or have permanent health issues. So do you see the extreme, right? The black and white, never, right? I'm going to die. Do you see the extremeness here, right? Tiny possibility, a fast beating heart, which can have several reasons. There could be several reasons why that's happening. It's, tachycardia. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It can be normal or it can be abnormal. It can be dangerous or it can be benign, right? So that's our fear. We're going to write out the fear, right? Now we're going to write a reasonable, rational response to this fear, right? This is for our prefrontal cortex. No one knows if or when they will have a heart attack. That's a fact. Nobody knows, right? They might even tell somebody that's really not, really like they have several risk factors for a heart attack, but it's not even possible. Like, we don't even know if that's really going to happen, right? I mean, think about the author/poet Charles Bukowski. They told him he was going to die if he didn't stop drinking, and then he lived for like 30 or 40 more years or something like that, right? Like, nobody actually knows. So there are some things you can do to prevent heart attacks, right? They'll say, oh, well, diet and exercise, right? But really, no one can guarantee that you will never have one. That's a fact. That is a fact. No one can actually guarantee that. There is no certainty. I could have a heart attack right now, right this second, right? Heart attack. It could happen. I don't know. Nobody knows, right? Having a fast heartbeat is not necessarily dangerous, right? That's true. There are people that are living with heart transplants who have had one or more heart attacks or have some other heart issue, right? Heart disease, or some people have a hole in their heart, right? And they survive and persist every day. There are people that overcome odds, right? There are people that have these, health issues, but they're not worrying necessarily about having a heart attack, right? Every second. So the worrying about having the heart attack takes time and energy away from creating a purposeful and meaningful life unique to me, right? No one can tell you what a purposeful and meaningful life is. You have to create that. You have to go on the journey to discover what that will be for you, right? Life can be tragic, that's true, but I can't prepare and prevent every tragedy. It is normal to have a fast beating heart when I'm panicked or anxious. That is true. That does not mean it is necessarily harmful. It could be due to the adrenaline and cortisol. That's what's going through our body. That's why we feel so scared when we have an anxiety or panic attack or episode, right? It's because those things are like, this is fight or flight. Like, we need to make a fast decision right now so that we don't die, right? But we have a disorder, so that thing is like going off all the time. I have thought many times I was having a heart attack and never did. I'm assuming that you never did, right? Because one vague sign and one very specific thought do not necessarily mean it is real or that it is any indication that it will happen, right? I'm going to have a heart attack. Look, I'm thinking it right now. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? I can't control this trigger, but I can accept it when it happens. Yes. You can't control your anxiety attack. You can't control the trigger or the thought, but we can watch it with this prefrontal cortex. Be like, I feel the intensity. I'm recognizing those intrusive thoughts. I know what this is. I'm having like an OCD episode. I'm panicking. This is rough, but okay. I'm going to ride it out. I'm going to breathe it out. Like, I know it always comes down. I don't need to fight it. I don't need to mess with it, because that's when we're actually going to create a problem, is when we start going, what does it mean? I need to stop this. That seems like it's going to help. No, that's why our OCD is so bad, is because we keep trying to control, right? Okay, so I can't control this trigger, but I can accept it when it happens. That's the only thing we have control over. The more I accept the uncertainty and ride it like a wave, the sooner I will come back down. That's a fact. Even though I can't control my anxiety trigger or my thoughts, I can control how I respond to it. Exposure and response prevention, right?